South African tourism sector is still trying to recover from the impacts of COVID-19. While international travellers are now allowed to enter into the country, there are certain rules that need to be followed. Among these are a negative COVID-19 test or a vaccine certificate card showing full vaccination. To look into how this is affecting tourism, we are joined by independent tourism expert Gillian Saunders. Thank you so much for your time, Gillian. We do appreciate it. You heard what the acting DDG from Health said with regards to everything's been sorted now. It was an issue around the wording of either vaccine card or vaccine certificates. But this surely is not doing well for the tourism sector, because anyone wanting to come into the country saying, I'm not going to subject myself to those rules and regulations, it's unnecessary time wasted, and clearly Port Health doesn't know what they're doing.
Well, Heidi, thank you very much for having me, and it's wonderful to be here. And you're sort of right. You're exactly right. It's very frustrating for the industry. We got the right, to get people with a vaccine certificate, which we hadn't had on the 23rd of March, which was a bit late. Many other countries were accepting vaccine certificates. You would have thought between the 23rd of March and now, or even before, because they would have been prepared, we would know exactly what we were going to accept. So this word certificate, which is in the regulations, seems to have been the whole stumbling block. So they were asking for card, they weren't accepting cards. But it was a lot of inconsistency. So some people would have to have a card, but or could have a card, but had to have a QR code. Even a certificate without a QR code was sometimes being turned away. Some people were told they had to have a QR code on their mobile and printed out, not just printed out and not just on your mobile. So it was absolutely haphazard, and it caused a lot of frustration for a lot of our tourists. And the thing is, I think it's just a general disdain for our industry that we feel comes through in regulations and just not caring. We're a massive industry. We were 120 billion rand of spend before COVID every year, and that's foreign exchange. It's an export industry, and it's coming back, and we have a destination that people absolutely love to come to. We fit all the post-COVID trends, and we are seeing more tourists. I mean, the good news is by March, our international long-haul arrivals was at 51% of 2019 levels, and in fact, Cape Town was doing better. In March, they were at 62% of long-haul international arrivals. This is great, but as the news goes back, you spend 3 to 6 hours at OR Tambo Airport because of messes. And the other one was when people arrived and their vaccine card wasn't accepted or they didn't have the QR code, then they were told they had to have an antigen test. Now, we heard that antigen tests were sometimes going for, I think it was $200 or $300, when it's supposed to be...
Dollars?
I think it was dollars. But anyhow, it was a lot more than what you get at 250 Rand in South Africa, maybe 150 sometimes, 350, but they were being overcharged. There'd be like one nurse, there was long queues to get the antigen tests. This goes back, and it goes back to the trade overseas. So they hear, I send my clients to South Africa, and they went through this hassle. So I won't send any more clients to South Africa. I'm going to send them somewhere else where they don't have these hassle factors.
It's a huge problem, and I would say, especially if you've been travelling, even if it's for 2 hours or 5 hours or 10 hours, you don't want to get to an airport and sit in a long queue. I want to ask whether or not the tourism sector is engaging with, for example, Port Health to say, you are limiting us, you are causing further problems. We have already been on our knees because of COVID-19, and now that we're slowly starting to pick up, other countries don't require South Africans, for example, to have vaccine certificates or even to have a negative PCR test. Why are we doing this?
Well, certainly, we've been engaging with the tourism industry at a national level. First of all, before it was the state of disaster, so it was via the National COVID Command Council. Now it's direct to the Department of Health. We've been asking for clarification, and we welcome the clarification. It's a little better, at least now, regardless of whether it's a card or a certificate, as long as it's got a QR code. So we've got some progress there after 2 months of frustration. But I think if we go back, we started asking for vaccine certificates to be accepted, or vaccine cards, back in the middle of last year, because some countries in the world were starting accepting. There was high levels of vaccination around the world by the middle of 2021. We got it in March this year. At the same time as we arrived at that point, other countries have opened up totally. They're not requiring travellers to have anything, no vaccine certificate, no PCR test, nothing. And in fact, there's no regulations within those countries. And there's 35 countries in the world now, as of yesterday, according to IATA, that have no requirements for international travellers with respect to COVID. None. Zero. That's where we should be going. And that's growing every day. Just a few weeks ago, it was only 23 countries. So we're now at the point where we're asking, can we please just take these regulations away? We actually think we're coming down a fifth wave. Our hospitalizations of deaths have been nowhere. Many other countries are recognising this. And at the moment, there's no reason to have any COVID restrictions. And if we could do that, we are we would be set to really get the tourism industry to grow very fast in the next few months, because we really are a sought-after destination.
I had you in studio, I think it was last year, when Omicron hit,
yes.
and we were speaking about how devastating this wave is, because everybody was looking at South Africa and not wanting to come near this country. I'm curious to know how the tourism sector is now picking up. I know you briefly mentioned it earlier on to say it's up by almost 2019 levels, but what are we actually seeing? Are we seeing those international tourists wanting to come because it seems as though COVID is not as bad as it was previously?
We certainly are. So as well as what we're currently achieving in terms of, like I mentioned, 51% long-haul arrivals into OR Tambo, the industry is starting to say the order books are picking up, and people are booking with a longer lead time as well. So people get more certainty overseas. They're happy to take a holiday, and as I said, we're a very sought-after destination. So it's starting to look super positive, and that's what we're really scared about, because if we do things to dent that, it's going to actually, be cancellations or postponements, or people will just get more reluctant to book our destination. But we are looking really good. I mean, Omicron was horrific. 90-some countries had banned us by early December last year. Banned travel to South Africa, or people from South Africa going to those countries. It was horrific. So we were actually in November, we were at about 33% of international arrival levels, and then we went shooting down in December. But again, what is phenomenal for us is actually it's come up. As soon as those bans were lifted, it was fairly fast. It's been growing very, very well. Yes, we're not at 2019 levels, and the industry is still struggling. There are still businesses that are closed. There are hotels that are closed and guest houses that are closed, some that have just recently reopened. We're still on our knees. We're still trying to get, the total industry. It isn't just the international inbound industry. Some elements of domestic tourism, we still have restrictions on gatherings, and we would like to see those lifted as well, as they have been in many other countries. So we don't have big events and concerts and big conventions that are a little bit harder to hold. And businesses are still not travelling as much as they used to. It's coming back. So there's a long way to still go, and while we have this incredible USP that the international market wants to come here, can we please let them in, and can we please take away all the red tape?
Yes, and not let them stand in queues for hours on end. Just lastly, very quickly, Gillian, do you know of any countries that have still banned South Africa? I hope you say no, because that would be quite horrific.
No, I'm not aware of any off the top of my head. So that hasn't been an issue that we've been, told by the trade. There's the people from certain countries are still banning us. So I think that got taken away. The whole world got Omicron, and eventually they realised that it wasn't as. So yeah, that's not a problem at the moment. Long may that last.
Yes, okay.